Hello, everybody. It's Kelvin. I'm from Capacity Building here at LATIMH, and we're here presenting our 9th study group with Dr. Ines. She'll be presenting the theme New Technologies for Mental Health Assistance, and I hope we can have a good reunion here today. And if you have any doubt or any problem, just escalate. Just click the Medicina Preventiva host here, and you can start a chat with me anytime you want. All right? You may start now, Doctor.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? I hope so. It's nice to see some old faces among the participants. And yeah, I just start my classes or my presentation right away. It will take, I guess, more or less 40 minutes. So we will have time for questions at the end. As Calvin already informed you, I will talk about mental health care, telemental health care specifically, through video conferencing. Why that? I realized the project until from 2011-12 until 2015 at the Institute of Psychiatry of the University of Sao Paulo here in Brazil. It was actually my PhD project. You can see me on the photo here defending it. And it was published at the Journal of Medical Internet Research last year. I think you will receive the article. It's open access article, so feel free to read more about anything in there after this presentation. But I want to start at the beginning because some people in here doesn't know me. So just a quick short bio. I have a master in psychology of the University of Zurich. I'm actually Swiss, that's why. And I, as I already mentioned, I did a PhD in psychiatry at the medical school of the University of Sao Paulo here in Brazil. And I worked in different research institutes during my master, and afterwards I was engaged in a couple of projects from the Research Institute for Public Health and Addiction in Zurich. And when I came to Brazil in 2011, I worked mainly for the IPQ, the Institute of Psychiatry, where I also realized my project. And afterwards, I worked for a year, more or less, at the LATIMH as well as a clinical coordinator. And among all those activities, I was able to create some experiences in telemental health related fields like telepsychiatry, web-based and SMS-based prevention and treatment programs, as well as have an insight in a couple of different disorders like substance-related and addictive disorders, depression or health promotion, and as well into treatment approaches like the cognitive behavioral therapy or different evaluation designs of programs and studies. But let's talk more about the study now. So when I came to Brazil, I noticed a couple of things, besides the good caipirinhas and the better weather than in Switzerland. First of all, analyzing the situation of mental health care, I noticed that there were extremely few psychiatric hospitals in most parts of the country, as you can see it here on the map, and also very, very little psychiatrists per population. Actually, you can see the numbers at the at your left side, there were around three psychiatrists per 100,000 population. Yeah, it's a lot of work to do for psychiatrists. And I thought, okay, maybe they're just all happy. In my further research, I discovered that this is not the case. As you can see on this graphic, which compares the disability adjusted life years among Brazil, the States, United States of America, Central Europe, and global. And you can see here on your left that Brazil is leading worldwide regarding to the dailies caused by major depression disorder. So there are no services and a lot of people suffering from mental illnesses, and this causes a tremendous treatment gap in mental health care, not only here in Brazil, that's I think a worldwide problem, due to structural barriers, the simple lack of hospitals, geographic problems like travel distances, economic burdens like travel costs, and as well social barriers like stigma. And this causes that 53% of adults with mental illness don't receive any treatment in Sao Paulo. This number is from a study from Laura Andrade and colleagues from 2012. I hope today this number is much less. And remembering the map I just showed you with the psychiatric hospitals, with the distribution among the country, we can say that certainly this gap is even worse in other regions of the country. So luckily, there are not only many persons with mental illnesses, but also a growing number of persons with internet access here in Brazil. That is to say, in 2012, when we started the recruiting for the study, almost 50% of the Brazilian population had internet access at home. So, taken together, I noticed that one, there is a need for treatment, two, poor access to existing services, and three, a lot of people with internet access. And this kind of presented me the solution for the problem, or like a possible way to treat the problem, mainly e-health, or in this specific context, the so-called telemental health. Oops, sorry. So telemental health uses technologies. I think that's all like stuff you already know, but I will just leave it complete. Telemental health uses technologies to provide mental health services from a distance, and there are different modes of TMH care delivery. One of the most complete mode is video conferencing, because it includes visual and verbal cues. You can see the person and you can hear him or her as well. Then there are emails, which is like not an interactive in-time conversation, but also kind of care from a distance. There are telephones, the old ones, which delivers the verbal cue as well. And of course, there are mobile phones, the apps, which also are taking a more and more important part in this scenario. And there are other solutions like virtual realities or other stuff like desktop softwares and so on. The benefits of all of those solutions is that it increases the access to care. It kind of brings the service to the patient, and it reduces travel time, or kind of they're not existing sometimes, and also the travel costs. And of course, it reduces the stigma because the person doesn't have to go until the psychiatric hospital, but he can stay at home and just open his computer and talk to his psychiatrist, for example. Yeah, nice. That seemed very seemed perfect to me for like being investigated here in Brazil, or like applied here. So I had a look to the evidence, and I found not a lot of studies back in 2011 and 12. But here's a review from 2030, which was published after we started recruitment already, which showed that telemental health generally could work, but there are mostly studies for specific settings or for specific populations, that is to say, for specific groups of patients, for example, or the settings were mostly psychiatrists in a hospital and a patient with another doctor in another hospital. So it was more kind of a second opinion than direct treatment. And yeah, this was leading me to the following conclusions regarding to the scientific evidence. There was a lack of evidence for large-scale use of psychiatric outpatient care via telemental health, in this case via video conferencing. And there was also a huge lack of evidence for middle and low income countries. There was no evidence at all for Brazil. And there was also no evidence worldwide for home-based care. That is to say, for studies, but there was no study who explored this kind of treatment in clinically unsupervised settings. As I already told, there was always a patient in another hospital with another doctor. We considered video conferencing the best mode to deliver psychiatric care from a distance, the same way as it was delivered face-to-face at the Institute of Psychiatry. So the objective of this study was to verify the effectiveness and feasibility of a home-based treatment for mild depression through psychiatric consultations via video conferencing. And we decided to do it home-based because, as I already mentioned, there was no evidence in this field. And we pretended to bring the care to the patients and save travel costs and time. And yeah, that was the thing to do then. And we last but not least, we included patients with mild to moderate depression, because we couldn't and didn't want to risk that severely ill persons receive an untested treatment in a home-based setting. So that was kind of a safety measure. Well, now a little bit boring stuff about design and methods. I hope you still hang in there. The patients were random. It was a randomized control follow-up trial with a follow-up after 6 and 12 months. And the patients were, that means the patients were allocated to two different treatment conditions. Under the treatment condition as usual, which you can see on the bottom here in this graphic, every patient received a monthly treatment, a monthly consultation, with his or her psychiatrist, face-to-face at the Institute of Psychiatry. In the meantime, the patients allocated to the video conferencing group on the top in this graphic, received after one face-to-face consultation at the beginning, received 5 consultations realized through video conferencing. And then after 6 months, they had another face-to-face consultation, and then another 5 consultations through video conferencing. So there was the same schedule for both groups, just the mode did differ between those 2 treatments. Those initial and midterm and final face-to-face consultations in the video group were done due to security reasons, and also because we had to assess the outcome variables. Some of them we couldn't do through a questionnaire, which they filled in by themselves. They were like, we needed a psychiatrist to interview them, as you can see later on. We've received thousands of emails of mentally ill persons who wanted to be treated via video conferencing from all over the world, that is to say from Brazilians living abroad, and also from all the states of Brazil. We had to do a very large pre-selection that happened mainly automatically through email. For example, we couldn't include persons who were not living in Sao Paulo because of the medication delivery. So that was one big limitation, and then we also needed a person who had broadband access, internet access at home. And after this pre-selection via email, we realized with the selected people 2 face-to-face interviews at the IPK with the psychiatrists of the study group, and there the diagnosis was established or confirmed if there already existed one, and the degree of depression was also established in order to be sure not to include severely depressed persons already in the study. And at the end, after all this selection and evaluation of participants, we allocated 107 patients to the 2 groups, 53 to the video conferencing group and 54 to the face-to-face group. Well, there were, as I already mentioned, several psychiatrists in the study group, namely 7. They had an average of like 13 years of professional experiences and were trained in implementing consultations via video conferencing. The team of Professor Shao, the telemedicine team, took part in this too. Thank you again. And all of the psychiatrists did deliver and were willing to deliver treatment in both conditions via video conferencing and as well in person. The medication delivery, no, I just jumped one. The patients were treated through the whole period of study by the same psychiatrist. There was no change between like the psychiatrist who did the face-to-face consultation and then the one who did the video consultation. It was always the same person. The consultations took more or less 20 minutes. They were quite brief, and they included psychoeducation, medication monitoring, and counseling, and the video conferencing happened via Skype. You can see that in the image. One of our psychiatrists, Dr. Rodrigo, in a call, in a consultation, and the the medication for patients treatment via video conferencing was delivered to the patient's home, and this was done by a contracted company who delivers like over 5,000 medications for the hospital, for the University of, I don't know the word, the name in English, the hospital of the University of Sao Paulo, kind of. And we could control and monitor all those deliveries through a platform. You can see the image on the right, at the bottom on the right. And also the patients could access this platform and check like if their medication is on the way, or if it happened, if there's any delay or something like this. And this helped a lot because most of the patients were quite anxious because of their illness, and this calmed them down, or gave them a little bit of control over things. At baseline, that means at the beginning of the study and of the 6th and 12th month, an in-person follow-up consultation was conducted after those pre-selection in-person consultations. And during this consultation, the severity of depression was assessed by the psychiatrist using the Hamilton Depression Rating Scale with 17 items. And after those in-person consultations, the participants completed an automatically generated web-based questionnaire at home, or if they wished, at the Institute of Psychiatry, that measured mental health status, satisfaction with treatment, therapeutic relationship, and medication compliance. This questionnaire was created by the platform SurveyMonkey. You all may know this brand. And yeah, let's go to the baseline. The treatment groups at the baseline did not differ regarding to demographic characteristics. The mean age was 36, as you can see on the right side here on the slide. 71% was female, single, majority was female, single, had a higher education, and was employed, luckily. And there was also no difference between the two groups regarding to medication. Even medication was individualized. That means we did not like, there wasn't a standard medication for all the participants. Every patient had different medications and different dosages regarding, like, depending on his or her state. But there were no differences between the groups regarding to type and dosage. The vast majority, or almost everyone, took antidepressants. The most famous was, or the most used was sertraline, followed by fluoxetine and venlafaxine. And 40% of the patients also had anxiolytics and sedatives combined with the antidepressants. There was also no difference regarding to travel time spent for realizing a consultation at the Institute of Psychiatry. This was mainly 3 hours traveling, considering both ways, like going there and coming back. And there was, in general, the groups didn't differ, but there was a difference between them, mainly regarding to the severity of depression. The video conferencing group had, for a coincidence, higher levels, higher scores in that scales, and logically kind of lower scores in the mental health status. So just keep that in mind. I'll come back to that later. Before I present you the principal findings, I would like to just mention some numbers. I think they're a little bit impressive, or to me they are. The study period was 35 months. It took us a while to recruit all the participants. And in this time, the total number of consultations was 950, and which 489 of them were realized via video conferencing. And we also conducted in total 286 assessments, outcome measurements. And yeah, that generated a lot of data, which I'll present you now. First thing we analyzed were the clinical outcomes. This is mainly the severity of depression. As you can see in this graphic here, there was a significant decrease in both groups over study and time. That means that the treatment generally was working, which was good, and for maintaining life. Otherwise, the psychiatrist would have killed me. Joking. There was no difference at 6 and 12 months between the two groups, but the repeated measure ANOVA showed a very significant interaction between treatment and time. That means there was a group difference regarding to the development of the severity of depression over the study period. You can see that at the beginning, as I was already mentioned, the video conferencing group had clearly higher levels in regarding the severity of depression, and then they dropped a lot until 6 months, and then at the end of the study, they had lower levels than the face-to-face group. So the dropping of the scores was stronger, apparently, in the video conferencing group. The other clinical outcome was the mental health status. It's kind of the opposite, like the severity of depression is the negative part, and the mental health status is the positive part, evaluated by the patients, not by the psychiatrist. And it kind of made a parallel development to the severity of depression. So there was a significant increase in both groups over the study time, which is also good. And there were no differences at 6 and 12 months either. But there was also no significant interaction between the two groups. So this means that both groups kind of had a similar development over the study period regarding to mental health status. The next thing I would like to show you is the treatment adherence. We assessed the treatment adherence with 3 variables. One was the number of missed appointments, the other was the medication compliance, and the last one was the dropout rate. As you can see here on the slide, sorry, that was one too far. Participants in the face-to-face group tended, it wasn't significant, but they tended to miss more appointments than the participants in the video conferencing group. And in general, 30% of the participants were adherent to their medication, or let's say only 30%. There were no group differences, and yeah, it's quite a low amount of adherent people, but unfortunately, it is consistent with the results of previous studies about treatment adherence among depressed patients. It's generally quite low. You might all know that too. And at the end of the study, interestingly, the patients in the face-to-face group were slightly more adherent to medication than the participants in the video conferencing group. So now let's talk about the dropouts, which is the third variable of the treatment adherence. Dropout or discontinuation of treatment occurred if participants were fully remitted. That was the happy case. If they missed 3 consultations or in a row, had a relapse, that means had a Hamilton Depression Rating Scale over 17, or needed additional care because of other illnesses, or showed an elevated suicide risk. So, but even if they were excluded from the study, they continued receiving psychiatric treatment at IPECI, at the Institute of Psychiatry. So at 6 months, as you can see here on the slide, 13 patients dropped out after treatment. That was among 12%. 3 of them were in the video conferencing group, and 10 of them in the face-to-face group. And this is a very significant, highly significant difference, as you can see it on the graphic below. It was like, it is just a percentage here. It's like 5.7% in the video conferencing group compared to 15.1% in the face-to-face group who dropped out after 6 months. And after 12 months, there was still a higher dropout rate in the face-to-face group, but it wasn't significant anymore. Nevertheless, I think it's quite impressive, like 19 to 26%. So yeah, it wasn't significant anymore, but still there. And generally, the dropouts we analyzed the dropouts, and they did not significantly differ from the completers of the study regarding to all the outcome measurements, as well as regarding to demographic variables assessed at the baseline from everyone. As a last result, I'd like to present you the satisfaction and the therapeutic relationship. So there was a high and stable satisfaction with treatment over the whole study period with no group differences. You can see it, like it's not a very interesting diagram. That's why I put it so small in here, but you can see it on your left, on the left side of the slide. And then there was also no group differences regarding to the therapeutic relationship, but a significant increase of that dimension over the study period. Here, you have to consider, like on this right diagram, you have to consider that at the baseline, when we assessed the therapeutic relationship, there was kind of, it's not a data you can use for any interpretation, because they didn't realize any consultations yet. So we considered the part from 6 months to 12 months as a significant increase in regarding to this relationship between patient and therapist. So let's just quickly discuss this results. I've already spoken almost 40 minutes, so there are 4 more slides. The results are mostly in line with previous studies in clinically supervised settings. Mainly, no significant differences between groups regarding to the most of all those outcome measures. Yeah, most of the studies did not find any differences regarding to clinical outcomes measured by some symptom severity, medication history, the period of inpatient treatment, or mental health status, and so on. And also the self-reported satisfaction with treatment and the treatment adherence was comparable in previous studies between those two treatment conditions. However, in this study, there was a better improvement regarding to severity of depression in the video conferencing group. And there were two previous studies, including depressed low-income Hispanics participants, which also found a similar result, mainly better development of patients in the video conferencing group. But in our case, there was a strong bias due to the higher score in this scale of the video conferencing group at the beginning of the study. This means as the scores there were higher, they also had a greater potential to decrease over the study period. And last but not least, we also have to consider that the scores, at least after 6 and 12 months, were really low. That means like lower than 5. And so even if there was a difference between the groups, we're not talking about like clinically relevant differences. Yeah, the patients in the video conferencing group were able to establish the same therapeutic relationship than those in person. I think that was a really important result too, because when I came here to Brazil, I noticed as well that persons are much touchier than in Switzerland. So I was really afraid of that fact that video conferencing would not allow any handshaking or kind of short touching shoulder or whatever when the person is crying. So, but this didn't seem to affect the relationship they created to their psychiatrist, which was very nice to see. And yeah, last but not least, it was nice to see as well that the dropout rate in the face-to-face group was higher, and this we explain mainly due to the long travel time patients had until to realize a consultation at the Institute of Psychiatry. Mainly 3 hours were compared to 30 minutes, which were on average necessary for realizing a video conferencing conversation. So we come to the final considerations. The study showed that home-based treatment of mildly depressed outpatients via video conferencing works, taken together, even in resource-limited settings. When we started the study, we had a lot of troubles with the internet connection, for example. And we noticed that a lot of people didn't have, for example, headsets or web cameras. So we all had to buy things and lend them give them to the people, and we had to re-establish all the internet connection of the hospital. For example, when it was raining, it was not possible to realize any video consultations. Yeah, we struggled like a couple of months as well with the medication delivery, but kind of figured out how to make it work. And at the end, I think it was comparable to a setting where all the resources are done already. However, and always more randomized clinical trials are needed, with all with similar settings, mainly home-based, unsupervised settings, and we need larger samples. Like our sample was 107, which was okay, but not very large. And like this, maybe one day the integration of video conferencing as a routine component of psychiatric care could be reality. and this would help a lot to reduce the treatment gap. So it would be like telemental health for all. And yeah, I think that was it from my part. Let me see. You can always write, phone, or text me. It was a lot of information. I'm aware of that in very short time. And I hope we can have now as well some questions answered. Yeah, I don't know, Calvin, how you want to continue. Should I just let it open and then everyone can ask whatever he or she wants to know?
Yeah, Doctor, first of all, I'd like to thank you for participating. And yeah, it's open for questioning. I think maybe if anyone has any questions or any doubt, thinking they can type it out here at the chat, so we can all see what the doubt is, and you can answer it. All right?
I think they're all sleeping. Okay, I see it now in the chat. Heloisa is asking, Highness, I did not understand why the video conference group also had travel time. Oh no, that was sorry. It's kind of yeah, good point. It's not very comparable. I just like the thing is I wanted to know how much time it takes for them to realize a video consultation, or like how much time they spend for their treatment. I was 30 minutes, and for the persons who were treated in person, we only assessed the travel time, but it wasn't the only time they spent for their treatment, because when they arrived at the institute, they had what to wait, they had to go to the drugstore afterwards in the same building and wait there too until they were attended. So just like and the time of the consultation as well isn't considered in there. So I think it would be more like 30 minutes for the video conferencing with no more waiting time, or a time spent for looking for your medication, compared to, I would say, more or less 4 hours spent for going and realizing and the in-person consultation and grab your medication. Was that clear? Clearer? Good. I'm just waiting for Isabella to finish typing. I think that will be the next question here. Oh wow, here we go. I just read it out loud for the record. Hi Ines, thank you very much for an interesting presentation. Thanks. Maybe you covered this before, but I lost internet connection for a few minutes, so perhaps you could answer it. Going back to what the literature said, the 2013 review on the telemental health about it working on very specific selected groups. What do you say with this regard to the study you conducted? Age and so on, socioeconomic status. I'm not sure if I totally got it, but in this review, or the review included studies. All of them were with very specific groups regarding to the diagnosis, for example, like autistic children or addicted adults, as well as because of the setting, like inmates, low-income Hispanics, and so on. So it was always like a very specific group, and not kind of of a general group, which represents the people attended at the psychiatric hospital. And of course, in our study, that wasn't the case either, because here in Brazil, in the public hospital are treated mainly or are treated the poorer people, the ones from higher social classes, go to private hospitals or have like a private psychiatrist. So the people are from lower socioeconomic groups, and they don't like, most of them don't have or didn't have. Today's another scenario. I think they don't have a lot of internet access at home. Also no computer, and so the people we included in our study were a little bit richer than the average treated there, and also more educated than the normal patient at the Hospital of Psychiatry. Let me see. Was there any certain group where it worked better in your study? Yeah, no, it was just one. It was one group. It was homogenic in our study regarding to the diagnosis and the other criterias, inclusion criterias, but it wasn't that general as I wished it would have been. Like I really would have liked to have a very representative group of patients, but like this we would have we would need to open it for like other illnesses, disorders as well, and for that we just needed first evidence due to security problems. Was that kind of an answer? Good. Isabel is happy. Me too. So Melissa is asking Yeah, what I mentioned a little bit just some seconds ago. Um, I would really love to like apply this to other groups of patients. There is also scientific evidence for vast diversity of disorders. There were good results for psychotic patients. There were good results for the best results were for autistic children, which I can really like understand very well, and so on. So there are a lot of like mainly I think almost every kind of disorders you can treat via video conferencing. It is just in our case it was necessary to take an easy treatable patient group in order not to risk, for example, any suicides or yeah stuff like this, because it's here in Brazil it wasn't legal at the time we conducted the study. It wasn't legal to treat patients via video conferencing, only if it was an activity within research, which was very closely observed by the ethical committee, and so we couldn't risk any severe or more complex disorders. But studies abroad have shown that this is really possible, and with good results as well. And so I think for including this mode into the treatment as usual, we need to apply it to other disorders as well, or have like a bigger study with a bigger sample with diverse disorders, and then maybe being able, what Isabel said, to compare between groups if maybe there are disorders very sensitive to video conferencing and others not very very treatable in that way. That would be very interesting. We have 1 minute left.
Perfect. If that was all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Ines, for the excellent presentation. It was really very enlightening. It was a great opportunity to learn more about the technologies. And I hope we can see each other soon. I mean, in other events from LineMH and everything. And thank you everyone that have participated here. We're going to send you the certificates and obviously all the material here. And we hope we can see each other again in our next event, alright? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.